Bun venit la o nouă ediție a emisiunii Ziua se apropie. În minutele care urmează vă prezentăm raportul european de la Bruxelles din luna ianuarie 2026 din seria de rapoarte lunare de acest fel. Yossi Lempkowicz, gazda emisiunii, îi are ca invitați pe europarlamentarul austriac Lukas Mandl și pe Tomas Sandell, fondator și director al Coaliției Europene pentru Israel, pentru a discuta despre Ziua Internațională de Comemorare a Victimelor Holocaustului, care se celebrează în fiecare an în data de 27 ianuarie în cadrul unei ședințe plenare din Parlamentul European. Vizionare plăcută!
January 27 marks 81 years since the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camps and the mass killings of Jews came to an end, but only after 6 million Jews had lost their lives in what has been called the greatest crime against mankind in history. Since 2005, this day is marked as a United Nations International Holocaust Remembrance Day, where commemorative events are organized in national parliaments and other prominent locations around the world. But today, also another date has been added to the Jewish collective memory of mass killings and pogroms. This day is October 7, 2023. In this edition of the European Report, we are going to discuss how the terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7, 2023 against Israel has changed the perception of Holocaust remembrance around the world. In the studio this month, here in the European Parliament in Brussels, we have Austrian MEP Lukas Mandl, a member of the European People's Party political group. MEP Mandl sits, among others, in the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. And with us also Tomas Sandell, founding director of the European Coalition for Israel. Thank you both for joining me today. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz. This is the European Report. Let me start with you, Tomas Sandell. As we have several times mentioned in this program before, you have been active on the EU level on these topics since 24 years. Can you explain how Holocaust Remembrance became an official day, also at the European Parliament, and what this means for you personally?
Yeah, thank you. It's correct that the European Coalition for Israel has been to some extent going for 25 years, if we look back at the vision when it was first presented. And I think one of the first achievements, if we may call it an achievement, was that we brought up this idea already in 2005 that wouldn't it be appropriate that here at the very heart of political Europe there would be an International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And we have to remember that in 2005 it had not been formalized by the United Nations yet. The European Parliament actually issued a resolution before the United Nations, something which hasn't been always paid attention to. And on the 27th of January in 2005, we had a small meeting. All beginnings are small. It was the Israeli ambassador, it was maybe a handful of members of European parliaments and others who came. And that was the beginning. Over the years, it grew, and I think within 2 years, the president of the European Parliament had already taken personal responsibility to host the event. And as Lukas Mandl would know, today it's institutionalized. So during a plenary every year on 27th of January, or as close as possible, this is part of an original plenary. So personally, as you said, when I look back of what we may call small beginnings, I'm very happy to see that this became a reality. And today, this is something which happens every year here in this European Parliament.
MEP Mandl, you have been a member of the European Parliament since 2017, so 3 mandates. Can you share with our viewers how this day, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, has evolved during the years, especially during the 3 terms that you are in the Parliament? And how is it recognized today by your colleagues in the Parliament? I mean, does everyone in the European Parliament understand the importance of Holocaust remembrance?
First, I'm grateful that the European report is present again in the European Parliament. The European Parliament can host the European report. It's an extremely important program and it's relevant what has been broadcasted in the European report for many years. Secondly, it's actually an important issue that, as Tomas Sandell has already mentioned, it's a regular exercise, an institutionalized exercise to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust, the Shoah, every year in the European Parliament in a formal plenary sitting without any political activism. This is important. I mean, I'm an elected official, I'm a parliamentarian, I like parliamentarism, I even think parliamentarism is a big innovation of mankind, but political activism is not in place when it comes to a proper remembrance, a proper memory for the victims of the Holocaust, of the Shoah. And this seems to be extremely important to me. It's a question of civilization. It's not a political standpoint to commemorate the victims. It's a question of civilization, of civilized human behavior, to remember victims, to mourn the victims, and also to not again be part of an aggression against them by forgetting them. This would be wrong, and this is why this very first Parliament of Europe in history, since 1979, is the right place, the European family table, so to speak, the living room of the European house is the right place to commemorate the victims on European soil, and they were victims of human aggression as well, of man-made aggression on European soil. So your question was whether everybody understands the depth of this very matter. Unfortunately, a serious response has to be no. Of course, I have not observed in my time in the European Parliament yet any kind of disturbance of this very exercise of the Holocaust Shoah memorial in the plenary. But there were disturbance activities of memories, of acts of mourning victims in other places in the parliament and outside the parliament in the past. We have to be aware of that. And I think what's always following the remembrance is the never again. It's 2 different things, but it's the one follows the other. Because mourning victims is an act in itself. It doesn't need any condition or any follow-up. It's mourning victims. But there is a follow-up if you, let's say, sane and soberly think about it. The follow-up is it happened. And I can only recommend to everybody observing the European report to reread Hannah Arendt, for example. Mm-hmm. It happened. It can happen again. We must not forget about that. We have to face the reality. It can happen again on European soil. Similar things happened, as you said in the beginning of today's program on October 7, 2023. It's possible. It's possible human behavior. It's in the range of what humans can commit as severest crimes you can imagine. And this is why the follow-up is always the never again, and never again means today. Never again is now. This is what, as a message, not a political message again, a human message, a message of civilization has to be conveyed time and again.
So you say that all political groups in the European Parliament respect this day?
Yet I can say in the plenary memorial acts, there was no disturbance from any side. and the members of European Parliament are very much free and personally responsibly on their behavior, on their activity as parliamentarians. So it's not only about groups; it's about each and every parliamentarian. And we all know there were parliamentarians accused of even law breaches when it comes to anti-Semitism and behavior like that. But these are only individuals, which has to be also seen individually. The institution of the European Parliament, under the leadership of Roberta Metsola today, but also under the leaderships of others like her predecessor, David Sassoli, and also others, was always clear. It is an institution of the Europeans in the sense also of European values when it comes to that question. But it's held up by the parliamentarians, and there have to be parliamentarians in nearly each group, or in each group, but there are parliamentarians in nearly each group who really hold up this behavior of civilization as I have tried to describe it.
Tomas Sandell, in some of your early discussions, you have expressed criticism as to how January 27 is commemorated around the world today. Can you explain why and how?
Yeah, I don't want to contradict anything that a good friend Lukas Mandl has said, that this should be depoliticized in a way. It's a matter of humanity. At the same time, I have had over the years some experience where, for example, and I think I mentioned it before on this program, when I was introduced to a very prominent EU politician as founding director of European Coalition for Israel, and the person asked, and what does this have to do with Israel? And I would argue that it has a lot to do with Israel, and we said this before. If there would have been a Jewish state, 1938, millions of Jews would be alive today. I would, from Jewish corners, they often say, maybe a bit cynically, that Europe loves dead Jews, but I have more problems with those who are alive. What I would add to the importance of January 27 are two additional dates. One is, correctly, as you mentioned at the beginning, October 7, 2023, to realize that never again we did fail them, never again did happen. And we have to understand that this is a reality today, but also that anti-Semitism today looks different and is often focused on the collective Jew, the state of Israel. And that's why I personally appreciate people like Lukas Mandl so much, because he doesn't make the distinction and say, well, yes, anti-Semitism, but no, Israel is awful, and Israel is, just as bad as Nazi Germany, as some may say. The other date that I would mention is the 14th of May, 1948, because I think if we lose the connection between the darkest hours of history in the Shoah with the rebirth of the Jewish state, then the message from January 27 is not complete. So I think that as much as January 27 needs to be commemorated here, I would like to see the same passion on May 14, the Independence Day, according to the Gregorian calendar, of the rebirth of the Jewish state. So let's commemorate on the 27th, but let's also remember October 7 and May 14.
And we will discuss the fact that some are making difference between Holocaust Remembrance Day and what's happening with Israel. And this is also a topic that we can discuss. MEP Mandl, you are one of the strongest voices here in the European Parliament when it comes to addressing anti-Semitism, you mentioned it, but also in regards to anti-Zionism, which is two parts of the same coin, in fact. Why is the European Parliament still divided when it comes to standing up for Israel? And we saw it since October 7, whereas everyone would agree that as Tomas Sandell say, the defeat of the Nazis and the establishment of the only Jewish state in the world was a necessity after World War II. So why is this difference between the two?
But it's a big question, but I try to elaborate my observation about it. First, I want to agree in everything what Tomas Sandell has just stated and emphasize two things. I really want to underline, of course, it's the case that as one official, a highest ranking representative of the Jewish people of our time in New York many years ago, when I was visiting New York, said to me, literally, it's worth nothing if you mourn dead Jews if you don't cooperate with living Jews and do nothing with living Jews. And that's what he said, and that's what I quote time and again, because it's extremely important to understand that. Let's say I want to remain with the dignity of remembrance. It remains a question of dignity and of civilization to do the remembrance. But I would say, I mean, sitting there and let's say looking in the cameras in a way that's appropriate for such a dignified remembrance is the one thing. But then going out of the plenary and doing nothing for Israel or with living Jews is just wrong. And this is the second thing I wanted to emphasize from the things Tomas Sandell has said, and I wanted to put it in my words literally now. Israel, obviously, especially after October 7, 2023, became the Jew among the states. And it's nothing better about treating Israel badly than treating any Jewish person in the streets badly. Mm-hmm. I want really also to convey that message to my colleagues in the European Parliament and also to the one or the other official of the European Commission. It's not better to be hostile against Israel than to be hostile against any Jewish person in the streets. And there are people hostile against Israel, the only Jewish state on earth, the Jew among the states, who would never dare to be hostile against a Jewish person in the street, or who would, in any case, deny to be in any way hostile to a Jewish person in the street, in a restaurant, in public transport, at the workplace, in a school, in a hospital, or elsewhere. But it's the same. Mm-hmm. And this is a message we have to convey, and this is a message not only I convey in the European Parliament, since you have drew the attention to my activity. There are many colleagues in the European Parliament from many different political groups who also draw the attention to the fact that dealing with Israel as the only Jewish state is also in the interest of Europe, in the interest of Europeans, in the interest of the values the European Union represents, in the interest even, of course, in security, but also in economy and in many other fields. So it's not a gift to anybody to deal with Jewish people or Israel. It's in the interest of Europe itself to do that and to in a sane and sober way address that politically is something everybody is requested to do in representing the Europeans in this very parliament. But I don't want to avoid responding to your question also directly. Representing people also comes along sometimes with and I don't agree with that, and I don't defend that at all. But you ask me, why is that the case? That not everybody of the 720 would do what I have just described, what would be right in the interest of Europe and the Europeans. So obviously, some people ideologically are having positions which are obviously against the Jewish state and also against Jewish people. And some might think they represent the negative emotions of their people in their constituencies, and we see some states in Europe where these negative emotions have risen. All over Europe, anti-Semitism has risen since October 7, 2023, which is in itself, it's not a miracle, but it's very, very disturbing. It's not a surprise, but it's of deepest concern that who was attacked? Israel and the Jewish people were attacked on October 7, 2023. Who were aggressive? Who was the aggressor and who was defending? The aggressors were the representatives of Islamistic ideology, political Islam, which is also one of the threats against Europe. different to Islam as a religion. I state that and emphasize that time and again. Islamism is also a problem for Islam as a religion, maybe in the first place, and then a security threat for everybody. So these were the aggressors, and the defenders were the Israeli people, the state of Israel for its people. And this all didn't lead to a clear solidarity, which I would expect, or which I would like at least to expect. But what happened was a rise of anti-Semitism all over Europe, and we deal with that in domestic affairs also, and we have to deal with it. This is something that threatens everybody, not only Jewish people, as everybody knows. Anti-Semitism might begin with aggression against Jewish people, but it leads to division of society, to weakening of society, and nobody is safe in a society where anti-Semitism is around and would not be fought. We have to fight it in Europe.
MEP Mandl, let's speak about your country, Austria. The Austrian government has been exceptionally attentive to fighting anti-Semitism. We saw it over the years, but it's also one of Israel's best friends in recent years in Europe. Why has Austria taken this position, and do you think that this stance will continue regardless of who governs Austria in the future? Do you think that this stance will stand?
A very important question. First, as a parliamentarian, I'm meant to be critical against governments of all kinds and executive branches of all kinds. This is part of my job and also of my mission as an elected parliamentarian, and I like that part of my mission. In that area, I very much agree with my government, and I'm lucky, I'm happy. I count myself lucky that I can absolutely agree with my government in that area, because it's an important area, it's a crucial area for the before-mentioned reasons already. It's not any part of policies, it's a crucial part of policies. It's about moral clarity, it's about values, first. Secondly, it was not always the same in Austria's history, also after 1945 or 1955, when Austria became fully sovereign. It was floating around, but today it's a clear stance by the Austrian government, and I want to underline that it's a purposely taken decision to have that standpoint as a Republic of Austria. And thirdly, of course, it has to be defended, especially in times when, I give you one example, when the Eurovision Song Contest takes place in Austria because an Austrian was winning the last European Song Contest edition, and it gets politicized. And there are representatives of countries, public broadcasting institutions, who dare to put on the table the idea of not attending if Israel, an Israeli representative, would attend the next Eurovision Song Contest. Of course, this is then a public debate everywhere, but also especially in the country where this Eurovision Song Contest version of 2026 is about to take place. And there was no doubt that the Austrian government has a clear stance, and also in the Austrian population, let's say the connection to Israel is there, the connection to Jewish people is there, and at the same time, things have to be emphasized time and again. The fight against anti-Semitism is important also in Austria. Everywhere in Europe, also in Austria. And we keep up that fight. And we had many examples during the time since October 7, 2023, of the rise of anti-Semitism. We have studies about that. The Austrian parliament is presenting on a regular basis studies about the state of anti-Semitism in the country, and these studies show also very specific, important information about groups of society, young people in urban areas. One has to be clear about that, also about young people with migration background or without migration background when it comes to anti-Semitism. Each kind of anti-Semitism has to be fought, and this leads me to my last point I want to make here. Of course, for Austria, there's also a historic dimension. When we talk about Holocaust and Shoah, among the criminals who committed these worst crimes in mankind's history, when it comes to genocide, were many Austrians. We know that. We have to admit that. We have to remember that too. But, and now it comes a very important point, when colleagues in the European Parliament who might be not as clear as it's in the European interest when it comes to Israel or to Jewish people, when they would address me as an Austrian with the message, you are only having this position because of your history, I have to say, it might be the case that because of history, we better understand where things lead to, where anti-Semitism, for example, lead to. But no, it's not like we can be cornered because we have a special history and that's why our position should not be taken into account. It's maybe quite the other way around. And also, independent from the historic dimension, it's a future dimension. As I said, it's an interest dimension. If we want human dignity in place, if we want individual freedom in place, if we want the values of our civilization kept up in an environment which is extremely hostile against these very values worldwide today, then we have to work together with Israel and with the Jewish people.
Before we are concluding today's program, I would like both of you to say how are you going to mark January 27 this year, and what would be your personal message on this day? Thomas, I will start with you very quickly.
I think we are going to the same event after this recording here in Brussels, but we will also do an online event on the 27th January with young leaders across Europe to raise these issues with them. And my message would be very simple. Remember January 7th, but also October 7th, also May 14th.
I emphasize this message. I will participate in the special plenary sitting of the European Parliament in the remembrance of the Holocaust, the Shoah, and the victims especially. And my message will be, never again is now.
This is all for this edition of European Report. Thank you, MEP Lukas Mandl and Tomas Sandell, for your insights, very interesting insight on the upcoming Holocaust Remembered Day. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz, and this has been the European Report. See you again next month.
Emisiunea Ziua se apropie, se încheie aici. Vă mulțumim pentru atenție și vă dăm o nouă întâlnire săptămâna viitoare la aceeași oră. Sunt Codruța Burghelea, vă spun la revedere și Dumnezeu să vă binecuvânteze!
Alpha,